Archangel Chronicles 2, Chapter 7, The Passage. Copyright 2024 by Raymond Collodi, all rights reserved. Adam. A fortnight later, we approached the heavily fortified city of Alexandria in the Caucasus, or Alexandria in the mountains. The city was built high on the Bactrian plain, near the entrance to the great pass through the mountains, known to people of my time as the Khyber Pass. Parties had been dispatched ahead of our arrival. The monk had told us that the local ruler, Euthydemus, was Greek-speaking, and so Theron was sent there ahead so that he could smooth the way and plan for the animals and human resources that would be needed to make the difficult passage across the pass. Our company crested a ridge on the well-defined and paved road leading to the city. The late afternoon light turned the landscape into a bluish hue, and the air had the bite of cold. We crested a ridge on the winding road, and there, spread out before us, was a well-defined city, unmistakably Greek, nestled in the valley at the foot of snow-capped mountains. Green, well-watered fields lay peacefully basking in the late afternoon light. The city was of considerable size, with wide streets laid out in a neat grid pattern. Colonnaded temples and domed public buildings rose behind high, stout, bastioned walls. At the base of the walls, all along the road leading to the main gate, was a bustling bazaar filled with tents and stalls, multitudes of animals, vendors hawking their goods, and swarms of customers examining them. I had the impression that I was looking at a smaller but still substantial version of the populous city that was the Alexandria I knew, which seemed now so far away. Columns of smoke drifted skyward from dozens of fires in the temples, the palaces, and public spaces. Towers rose above the terracotta-tiled rooftops. Guards watched along the high battlements, armor and shields reflecting the angled sunlight. Hareth, who rode beside me, in company with the monk and the girl Loukia, took a deep breath of air and exhaled. "We are in a place of safety here, physician, though for how long is known only to the fates," he said. "We will be amongst friends here. This is the gateway to the lands of the Indus on the other side." "This is a large and impressive place, my friend. How did it come to be here?" I asked. "For it reminds me of another place called Alexandria, by a great river in Africa, where I have come from." First of the Alexandrias, this was the last. Over 300 years ago, he built this city to guard the entrance to the great pass through the Hindu Kush. It is said that he settled 20,000 of his veterans here. The city has grown wealthy on trade, but now falls under the shadow of the approaching Kushans. It was the last of the Alexandrias to be built, and it may be the last to fall. There are grim days ahead for my people, I fear. First in silence, and then turning to each other, the people began to mumble about the meaning of these strangers as we passed by them. They looked and pointed to the girl Loukia riding on the cart beside the monk, and to the tall boy with the eagle on his arm, riding beside her. As they pointed and spoke in whispered tones, they gathered in groups and came to our procession, following beside us and closing in behind us. This became a groundswell as we made our way towards the gates. Some women and children following Loukia and the monk pointed to them excitedly and shouted, "Nepios Saxander, why have you come to save us? Oh, happy day!" The shouting grew louder as more and more townspeople joined the procession. "Save us, O daughter! Praise the gods! She is here to save us," they chanted. "And look, here she brings the very wings of victory with her. The spirit of Nike is in that eagle." Our progress slowed to a crawl with the crush of people, waving silk banners and bright-colored ribbons, and throwing flowers before us. We came through the gates, where we found a regiment of phalangists, flanked by a dozen war elephants lining our path to the public square, holding off the surging mass of the crowd. The people clamored to get a glimpse of the green-eyed princess and her heavenly protector, the monk. Hareth pointed to a raised platform before a colonnaded temple. Standing before it was a group of men and women dressed in Greek style, but in richly colored gowns of silk. "There, my lord physician, the one standing next to Theron on the dais, that is Euthydemus, the ruler of this place." Euthydemus, wearing a crown of gold laurel leaves, stepped forward as we drew near. Courtiers came to help Loukia down from her cart. They bowed before her. She seemed mystified by all the attention. Two children, a boy and a girl, went before Loukia, showering flower petals in her path. As we ascended the steps to the temple porch, Euthydemus and his court waited. A group of musicians and dancers followed, playing joyful tunes on their flutes and making time with handheld drums and tambourines. Loukia and the monk came before Euthydemus and his courtiers. They all bowed deeply, and Euthydemus stepped forth, going down on one knee as he held Loukia's hand, kissed it tenderly, and put it to his forehead. He stood, and turning to the monk, held his hands together as if in prayer. "O Holy One, the light in me honors the light in you," he said. Turning to the growing crowd in front of the temple, Euthydemus declaimed in a loud voice, "Dark have our days been these past years. One by one our sister cities have fallen under the shadow of the Kushans. We are the last of the free cities of Alexandria beyond the mountains. Hope has fled us as our brethren succumbed to the will of Euthydemus and his kin. But here, brothers and sisters, from beyond the underworld comes our hope, renewing us like the springtime. For here is our daughter, heir to Roxanna and the divine Alexander. Come to her people." The crowd of townspeople erupted with wild cries of joy, music from many flutes, the beating of drums, and the songs of joyful voices echoed back from the high mountains in the distance. "And our people welcome you, Queen of the Besieged, and your company, who have brought this child Roxanna safely to these walls," announced Euthydemus. Theron had done his advance work very well. Too well, in fact. I had a twinge of doubt that we would ever be free to leave this place without the girl. That evening, Axia, Arcelian, Scaris, Theron, and I feasted with Euthydemus and his court in the palace. We reclined, Greek style, on sofas, between long draughts of wine from a golden goblet, and consuming vast quantities of fruits, meats, cheeses, and nuts heaped upon the tables in front of us, Theron spoke. Lord Euthydemus, I feel we have traveled to the ends of the earth and the roof of the world, only to find ourselves back home. I feel your handsome city at the foot of the Hindu Kush is a smaller version of any city in the old country. Wide avenues, orderly streets, the agora, theaters, gymnasia, and this palace, as Greek to me as Thebes. Euthydemus grew pensive for a few moments. Then he spoke. Yes, we are all children of Axia, transported here, root, stock, and fruit, to these far lands by the great king of Macedon himself. My father was a soldier, and his father and his father's father before him. For 300 years we have lived in this place. The land is rich and productive. Our laws and customs reflect back the glories of our former homeland. Yet we Greeks of the farthest lands yearn for our home, the home we never knew. We sigh with thoughts of seeing those sun-kissed coasts and azure waters in our dreams. So we keep our customs, our language, our songs, plays, and stories to keep those memories alive in our imagination. Would you return, my lord, if there was a way? I asked. No, replied Euthydemus, for though we yearn for that old homeland, this is our nation now. We have prospered here, raised our families, and built new lives. We have become one with the land and count ourselves blessed by the gods. And so it has been for eons. But we are under a shadow now. Once all the great cities of Alexandria in the east, Alexandria Ariana, Alexandria Arachiosa, Alexandria Escate, Alexandria Roxanna, were all allied with us. But one by one these have fallen to the nomads, the Utes, the Kushans. Some of them have adopted our language, laws, and customs, but they are not our kin. We are a shrinking oasis in a parched desert, my friends, and I feel there may come a time when the light of Axia in the east will no longer shine. Is there no help from the south? The Indians? I asked. Euthydemus stared into his cup. There is Gondophares and his people, the Indo-Parthians. He has carved out a mighty realm from the foot of the Hindu Kush on the other side of the great pass to the sea. But we have not spoken to them since the fall of Alexandria Escate. Euthydemus looked at me, tears in his eyes. We are caught between two empires, Adam the Wise, he said. At any moment, we may be swallowed up. Hereth now spoke up. My lord, king of the Farthest Greeks, my mission is to keep Loukia and her mother safe. Theron has told you that the Kushans are pursuing us. They seek to bury her with her tyrant, Hiraeus, in his kurgan. They will follow us here. Wisdom directs that they cannot remain long with you. Targetus, sitting with Zephyra, hooded and at rest at his side, displayed a growing look of alarm on his face. At last he could not restrain himself any longer. He flung himself before Euthydemus, kneeling before him. O king of the Farthest Greeks, hear me. You cannot keep her here. You must let her come with me. Euthydemus, eyes brimming with tears, looked upon Loukia. Alas, my child, you were our hope. Have you now brought our doom to us as well? Do we keep you here to raise the courage of our people, or do we send you away? What is to be done? Theron, Ever the deal-maker now spoke up. "My lord king, perhaps there is a middle ground. We are bound for Taxila. We can take the princess and her mother with us as ambassadors. We will seek the Gondophares and seek an alliance for you. You may not have the enemies you fear on your southern flank." Axia, hearing all of this, rose. She went to Euthydemus, gently laying her hand on his shoulder. "Noble sovereign," she said, "I see that long you have suffered with the weight of preserving your people. I, too, have felt this burden. But I tell you, you have hope. You have allies. Let me take the princess and her mother with us. We will go to the Lord of Taxila. I will be your advocate with this Gondophares, whoever he is. I can offer him the friendship of my people to the west and the strength of my horse archers. If this Gondophares is wise, he will see the need to support you as a buffer to these Kushans, who sooner or later will challenge him." Theron now spoke excitedly. "Think of what could be gained, my lord. Allies in your time of need, and new trade routes to the populous south." Euthydemus bowed his head deep in thought for a time, weighed down by the decision he was forced to make. All the banquet room grew quiet as we waited for his answer. He looked up and gestured to Loukia, who came quietly to stand before him. "Tell me, child, for you must speak for your mother as well as for yourself. What would you have me do?" Loukia, child of light, smiled, her face glowing. She turned to Targetus, standing beside Axia, and pointed to him. "I will follow him and his eagle, my lord. They will lead us to safety." Targetus' face flushed red with the attention of this girl. The next day was spent in preparation. Only the fittest horses were selected by our party. They were joined by several dozen mules and many yaks. Together with 100 or so of the horse archers and our Salians lancers, our party was now a large one. The yaks were strongly built animals with sturdy limbs and long, dense, piebald fur, black and white, hanging like a hair skirt, nearly touching the ground. Some were hitched in teams to wagons. Some were piled high with supplies and trade goods, waiting patiently for their drovers' orders. Hareth, looking over the assembly of men and beasts in the public square from a high balcony, turned to our Salian and I. "This crossing is never an easy one, my lords, especially at this time of year. The weather will be treacherous, and there will always be thieves and bandits in the high places. The path follows the river canyons, and there is peril where it becomes narrow, so narrow that our party will have to pass single file, and our ox carts and horse carriages will have to be disassembled to make the passage. There are wild tribesmen in those high places who know the terrain, where to attack. I fear we will lose many men and animals on the way." "What are those strange beasts with the black and white fur?" our Salian asked. "Our people have used them for generations. They are docile and slow of foot, but very strong, and well suited to live in the mountains and high places. Way down there in the plains, our people have favored the horse and the camel. But up here, these beasts are the ones who bear our burdens. They offer us milk and meat and will sustain us, and their wool will keep us warm. Their droppings we will burn in our campfires." Our Salian nodded his head in agreement. "Ah, I see," he said. "Yaks to the mountains are as horses are to the plains. Transport, food, and clothing. They serve us well." The first day we made reasonable progress. At the first, the track was wide until we came to the foot of the great snow-capped mountains. Then we began to climb, and the trail rose higher and higher in a series of switchbacks against the steep mountainside. We reached a high point and looked back. We took a moment to catch our breath, to see the beautiful city in the distant valley below. The painted brick walls of Alexandria and the Caucasus glowed rose-colored in the misty valley before us. We turned back to the road. It now ran straight before us and climbed ever higher. On each side, the snow-capped peaks of the rugged Himalayas towered above us, swallowing the road ahead of us in the shadows like the maw of a mighty beast. As we trekked further into the shadows, the track angled ever higher. The air grew thin and cold. The wind picked up. The icy cold penetrated like a driven nail. We drew our thick blankets of yak wool ever more snugly about us. A routine emerged. Each day started with warm yak milk, which reminded me greatly of Scythian mare's milk, but richer and with a nuttier flavor. Cheese and unleavened breads gave us energy to labor along the road, sometimes in columns and sometimes in single file. It snowed, and with each day, the going got harder as the snow deepened. Ragged clouds, driven by an incessant wind, covered the sun. Each night, we huddled together in a circle of warmth, surrounded by our animals. The drovers saw the yaks were placed on the outside of the circle, and those animals that were more susceptible to the cold were kept next within the circle of life. Finally, in the center, we men and women sat huddled before the fires in our tents, fueled by yak dung. In the morning, we had to dig ourselves out of massive snowdrifts that formed in the night, piled high by the winds that never stopped. The wind played tricks with our hearing. It whispered or roared, carrying distant sounds of what I thought were drums and horns. On the third day, we began our running battle with some hill tribesmen. They rolled rocks down upon us and appeared suddenly in armed groups, either or simultaneously in the front, on our flanks, or in the rear. We drove them off, but the effort began to weigh upon us and sap our strength. These brigands did succeed in snatching some of our pack horses and trade goods. A plan was formed. Our Salian ordered a number of the horse archers to dismount. Scarus led them as they climbed the heights above the narrow road, snaking along the river through the mountains to protect our caravan from the heights as we proceeded through the pass. No different than dealing with them hill tribes of Hibernia, he said, but it was slow going. On the night of the fourth day, after a particularly difficult time struggling through the snowdrifts barring the way, Axia and Arcalian summoned me to their tent. We sat by the fire in the center of the felt yurt, while the wind howled around us. The sound of the wind was accompanied by the howling of wolves close by. The little circle of light cast by the fire was the only solace from a great feeling of foreboding and danger that gripped all of us. Axia was troubled. Her face was streaked with exhaustion. She sat cross-legged on the carpeted floor, rocking back and forth. She looked at me, her eyes full of alarm, and reached out to grasp my forearm. Her hand closed around my wrist like a vise. "Adam the Wise," she said, "I am sick with foreboding. I can no longer go on. Something weighs me down and oppresses my very soul. I feel for this child within me." At that moment, a lone wolf howled close by. The horses outside stirred and nickered, sensing something in the air. "Can you not summons the torchbearer to help us?" she said. "My queen, Raphael and his kind are not at my beck and call. We must do the best we can without them until they show themselves to us again." "But where has that light gone? Have we all been led to this place to be forsaken and forgotten? To perish and become food for these wolves? Why have we been abandoned?" "We are not abandoned, my queen. You shall see." She sobbed and fell back into the embrace of Arcalian sitting beside her. I reached out and felt her forehead. "You're burning with fever." I loosened the fastenings of her cloak, revealing the Cairo medal that Raphael had hung around her neck the night she was rescued from death. My old medal. The silver medal caught the glow of the fire. But there was more. Something strange was happening to it. It was glowing and pulsating. "This medallion that I wore until the night of your near death, my queen, do you feel it burning? Has it become heavy around your neck? Do you see the shadows?" "Yes," she whispered. "I see dark shapes gathering around us, following us just at the edge of sight. They are formless and blacker than the blackest charcoal. They have faces, and they whisper to me, though I do not understand what they say." I nodded. "I know your burden, my queen, for I have often felt this myself when I wore it, after Raphael gave it to me. We are in an evil place. This is what oppresses you. You see and feel the shadows, the black hole that draws out all hope." Axia sat up, held by Arcalian. She grabbed my tunic with 2 hands and looked at me, terror in her eyes. I have never before seen Axia Panoplides afraid of anything. "I cannot bear this burden, Adam. Can you take it from me?" She was panting in fear. "If you give it to me, my queen, I will accept it willingly." She reached behind her neck and undid the clasp. The medallion and its chain fell into her hand. She held it out to me. I took it and fastened it around my neck. It was very heavy and pulsating with heat and vibration. I had a vision. I could see through the thick felt tent walls as if they were transparent glass. I saw, as in a ghostly light, a group of about a dozen figures, all clad in black, coming towards the camp. Black shadows followed them and reared up behind them. Crooked, branch-like tendrils of blackness reached out between these figures as they walked, the icy wind tearing at their battered black cloaks, making them look like scarecrows. Then, in a flash, I was back in the tent. Everyone was looking at me, fear etched on their faces. I mouthed the words that were in my head. "Someone is coming for us. I must go and meet them, alone." I stood up, picked up a torch, and lit it from the fire. I left the tent. I met Hereth and Scaris standing before the camp. Ragged clouds, driven by the wind, were now suddenly rent with a tear, revealing the open night sky. The light of a full moon illuminated the ethereal snowscape. Hereth and Scaris had quietly summoned the guards, who stood, arrows and pikes at the ready, facing out into the darkness beyond the moonlight. A group of armed men wrapped in black cloaks stood at a distance. Swords, clubs, and axes dangled from their hands. One of them stepped forth. The Cairo metal around my neck warmed me, and its vibration was comforting. This gave me strength. "Do you know who these men are?" I asked Hereth. He spat. "They are thieves and bandits, the worst of the worst. These men are terrible, my lord. There are few of them. We should kill them now." "No," I said. "I shall speak to them, alone." Hereth was astonished. "You must not do this, my lord," he hissed. "They will take you from this place and cut your throat, or worse." Scaris seized my arm. "Dominus, you must listen to the man. You're not even armed. Let me go with you." A strange calmness settled upon me. "No, my most devoted friend. They have been put in our path for a reason. Fear not." I stepped forward into the night. As the moon was again covered by dark shadows, I felt myself seized by many hands and dragged into the darkness. But the Cairo metal warmed and comforted me. I was ready to face whatever would come. I stumbled and was dragged through the darkness in the captivity of these men, dressed in ragged black cloaks, their faces hidden by scarves. After a time we stopped, and they formed a circle around me. Another shaft of moonlight from a tear in the ragged black clouds revealed a towering rock ahead of us. On its summit were the remains of a fortress of some type. It was ghostly in the moonlight. The Cairo metal pulsated fiercely with energy and heat. One of the ragged black figures stepped forward. He undid the dark wrappings covering his face. His skin, illuminated by the moonlight, was deathly white. He opened his mouth to speak, revealing a line of broken teeth. He hissed as he spoke. "Why have you come here?" Behind this man, towering over him, was a blackness, a shadow reaching for him with black, bone-like figures, touching him, caressing him, swirling black ribbons wrapped around his feet. I think you already know the answer. That is why you and your brethren have been bidden to come for me by your master. He shuffled closer. He was bent and disfigured, a wreck of a man. A repulsive stench made me hold my breath. He came even closer, his face inches from mine. "Why are you not afraid?" he hissed. "Do you not dread what awaits you?" Grasping my yak fur cloak, he unfastened it, revealing the Cairo medallion, which flashed with a brilliant light. I had never seen it glow with such intensity. He reached out as if to seize it, but suddenly recoiled, stumbling backwards, blinded, holding his hand over his eyes. turning his head away from me. "Kill him! Dismember him! Now!" he growled to his followers. Knives were drawn, and the circle closed in on me. Many hands reached out and touched me, but they recoiled, and none seized me. These men murmured among themselves. Then they cursed each other. They raised their hands with daggers as if to strike me, but something seemed to hold them back. I looked up to the ruined fortress. I heard a voice in my head. "Go, fear not." The groups surrounding me parted, and I went through them. I ascended the broken stairway hewn from the rock, a shaft of moonlight lighting the way. At the top of the stairway, I saw a crashed gate thrown aside and askew from its hinges. I stepped inside. Shadows, darker than the darkest pit, swirled around me. Daggers of dread began to pierce my soul from all sides. I grasped the medallion in my hand tightly, and shining through it like a searchlight, a pull of light revealed that I stood before the entrance to a dark cave. Peering through the utter darkness, I saw 2 red eyes. This creature was stirring, a formless mass of malevolence. It billowed around me, wrapping me like the coils of a snake. I heard the distinct sound of hissing. A deadly coldness engulfed me. I held on to the medallion with all my strength. As the impenetrable darkness surrounded me, it glowed ever brighter. Then, from behind me, I could sense something changing. Somehow, I was able to turn my head and look up to the sky. The dark, ragged clouds were gone. The sky was filled with stars. The moon was setting in the western sky. Then, close to the horizon, I saw a pinpoint of light. I felt the coils of darkness around me shudder and then release me. The light on the horizon grew larger and took shape. At first, a mysterious blue light, blazing brighter and brighter. It became a pillar of light, throbbing like a blinding white-hot fire, silver and flowing, growing larger. It swirled like a rush of flame, then molten waterfalls, then soaring and flying like firebirds on wing. Then, echoing over the mountaintops, in the now still air, I heard a chorus of choral voices, sweet, but with no discernible melody or shape. As I listened and the light grew stronger, I could hear a vast multitude of singing voices. The voices swelled my spirit, and all despair and fear left me. I threw my thick cloak aside and turned back to the cave entrance, thinking to face the beast within. But the darkness had receded, and the beast withdrew further and further back into the cavern, until at last I could no longer see the red eyes in the darkness or feel its presence. Turning back to the light and the joyful chorus in the skies, I saw that from the pillar of light, another one, even more brilliant, to the point where it hurt my eyes to gate upon it, emerging. This blinding white-hot fire, fluid as water, quicksilver, pulsating, crackled like static electricity. Then, from within this pillar of light, I saw the image of many eyes. And then, from the center, stepped out a being of great beauty, with shimmering silver skin, long golden hair, crowned with a diadem, holding a flaming sword, which pulsed and crackled as he stepped forward. I fell to my knees and bowed at his feet. I looked up, and he gestured me to rise. I did so, stepping back towards the gateway. I knew this was Michael. I knew this to the core of my being. As I watched, he raised his sword, and with a swift and mighty blow struck a rock over the cave entrance. A crack of thunder rent the night sky. The entrance to the cave collapsed, burying anything within it under a mound of rock. He turned and nodded to me. I fell to my knees again, my head touching the ground, and I stayed there for what seemed like an eternity. When I came to my senses, the sun was high overhead, warming me. I turned my face to the sun, stretched out my arms, and the words of an ancient hymn came to my lips. O radiant light, O sun divine, of God the Father's deathless face, O image of the light sublime that fills the heavenly dwelling space, O Son of God, source of light, praise is your due by night and day. O happy lips must raise the strain of your esteemed and splendid name. I stayed there, arms outstretched for hours, lost in the experience. The time had come for me to return to the camp. I climbed down the steps. The air was still and fresh and warmed by the sun. At the foot of the steps, I found a circle of discarded, ragged black cloaks. The evil wearers of these garments had disappeared in the sunlight. I turned back to where I came from, the east. There, soaring between the shoulders of mighty peaks flanking the narrow path, I saw Zephyria, and not long after her came Targetus, running to me. We embraced. Then, stepping back, he looked me over, head to foot. He held his hands to his face in astonishment. "Kyrios," he shouted in surprise. "Your hair, your beard, they have turned white." I put my arm around him, and we stepped forward to the top of the path where the entrance to the ruined fort had been. We crested the top of the rise, and there, warming in the rays of the midnight sun, stretched out before us, was a beautiful valley and the green fields of Gandhara, and a great river winding its way into the distant haze. "Targetus, my son, the world has changed forever," I said. Music for Chapter 7 from ED Records, Legends, and Save the Word. Independent from Unis Ex Disciplis Meis. From Epidemic Sound, Invincible, Ethos by Johannes Bornloff. Chant of the Moors by Floun. Sad Business, The Odyssey Ahead by Dream Cave, Army of Angels by Edgar Hopp, Choirs of War by Dream Cave, Consumed by Darkness by Christopher Mo Ditlevson, Monsters Are Real by Dream Cave, Demon Night by Farrell Wooten, Crypta by Joe Wandrinil, Vatican Mystery by Trailer Works. Kyria Eleison by Silver Maple. Archangel Chronicles 2, copyright 2024, all rights reserved, by Raymond Colati.